It means the Ministry's interfering at Hogwarts.
You're not going mad. You're just as sane as I am.
I must not tell lies.
You seem to be laboring under the delusion that I'm going to, what was the phrase? Come quietly.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are covering Chapter 20, Hagrid's Tale, and we have Jenn back with us.
Hello.
We essentially just start this chapter by, the last chapter ends with, oh, Hagrid's back. So we start this chapter with, we're going to see Hagrid, even though it's like the middle of the night.
Also, Ron just got back from
walking the grounds.
4-hour walk in the snow. He should be by the fireplace with hot chocolate and a blanket.
He also should have passed Hagrid arriving at the hut.
That's also a good point. But it's kind of implied he didn't actually notice where he was going or what he was doing because he was out for 4 hours.
What do you think Ron's thinking about as he's walking randomly about?
I don't know.
Do you think just life, Quidditch?
It's got to be really depressing thoughts. He's probably beating himself up way more than necessary.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And then the way he ended that last chapter with just berating himself, and Harry's like, can you stop?
I like Harry in that. He's just stop it.
If anybody should feel bad, it's me. And then they just have a depression off, and it's,
Yep.
Anyway. So we're here to talk about this chapter. So yeah, they immediately go visit Hagrid, and they realize very quickly that Hagrid is not exactly looking very healthy. He's in some rough shape. So much so that he's using dragon meat as a healing option. How does one just go to the butcher and get dragon meat?
That's a good question.
I imagine.
Where did he get it?
Is this like a Nocturne Alley type deal?
Oh, I bet you're right.
Because I can't imagine dragon meat is easy to come by.
I wouldn't think
for
so.
a number of reasons.
Right.
And it can't be cheap.
Especially, so one thing I thought was interesting, in terms of sizing, it's described as the meat is the size of an average car tire.
It's a large piece of steak.
Big chunk of meat, and he's slapping it on his face and stuff.
They also double down on his size of twice the size of a man, 3 times as wide. I'm like, that's a big dude.
Well, he needs a car tire of meat to
just cover his face.
Cover half of his face.
Yeah. But it's also got to be heavy. Just a car tire of meat.
Well, it keeps slipping and falling.
Yeah.
And then at one point it falls on the ground and Fang gets it and he wrestles it out of Fang's mouth and puts it back on his face.
I gotta agree with Hermione. It's not exactly the most sanitary. When your face is covered in bruises and wounds, no, not ideal. But it is nice to know that dragon meat does have the healing option.
Yeah.
I guess we do learn about Hagrid's travel plans, so maybe he doesn't mention, but maybe he came across Charlie at some point in his travels, and maybe that's where he picked this up.
Maybe on his way home or something.
Or at least he wrote him and was like, hey, got any solutions for this? I don't know. But anyway, you get a little bit of Hagrid snark in this chapter with, obviously the trio eventually gets to a point where they annoy him enough, and they surprise him with some knowledge that they shouldn't know. And he's like, oh, okay, I'll tell you. And yes, I was going to find giants. And then they're like, well, did you find them? He's like, they're giants. They're not hard to find. They're massive, massive creatures.
That was one of my favorite parts in this chapter, also because, so he says that it's kind of easy to spot giants, and he goes, pretty big, see? And Ron goes, where are they? And Hagrid just goes, mountains.
Yep.
And that it kills me because it's Hagrid unhelpfully says mountains.
Yep.
I imagine it in the monotone, just mountains. It's not a big deal.
Nope. I mean, come on, this is common knowledge, Ron. What are you doing here?
Obviously mountains.
I will say that I did not exactly remember just how far he traveled for this. For whatever reason, in my mind, and I shouldn't have, because there's really not real mountains in Britain. Mm-hmm. There's some impressive hills, but that's about it. And so it's I don't know why I had always thought that he was just traveling through Britain. I don't know why.
Did you really?
That's what I, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
always remembered.
Okay.
And then when it's like mountains, wait, there aren't any actual real mountains.
Oh, that's
Okay.
funny.
So, and then I'm like, okay, well, maybe he just went into France, because there are real mountains in France. Nope, he kept on going. So there's a whole lot. But
Yeah,
anyway.
he went on a whole trek.
He went on a whole trek, which I am super jealous of. But he went with Olymp, who he mentions is a fine, well-dressed woman.
I saw that. Hagrid commenting on clothing that's so cute.
A fine, well-dressed woman. Just saying. All right. Hagrid feels a certain type of way. But we learned that Olymp went with him and that she proved herself quite useful in a number of different ways. He was a little worried that a woman such as herself carries herself in a certain way might not be cool with roughing it.
Yeah.
Sleeping in caves, sleeping on dirt, whatever. And he was like, no, she was cool with it. Never had a problem. And then we'll get to some other more interesting parts of her traveling with Hagrid. But we got to know that Hagrid and Olymp were also tailed by a ministry official. And and he was explaining to, again, the trio, like, you do realize we're rather large people. We don't exactly, like, blend in very well. It's pretty easy to spot us. So to tail us, we have to work exceptionally hard to break. And they weren't allowed to use a whole lot of magic because Hagrid, not exactly supposed to use magic. And if a ministry official is tailing you, that can get him into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So not only did they have to get away from this tail, they had to do it with minimal magic, which is quite impressive. They ended up with this story about how they were going to France on holiday. And we're going maybe by her school and, sunshine on the beaches of France and stuff like that. And that's great.
Sounds very nice.
It sounds wonderful. I would love to experience that someday. I've never been to France. But they explained, like, once they actually broke the tail, they wanted to go further and further east. So they ended up ran into some trouble. They ditched the ministry official, then ran into trolls by the Polish border. And then they had Hagrid specifically, had a disagreement with a vampire in Minsk, which is the capital of Belarus. So they're going further and further east.
He can't just drop that casually and not give more information. I want to know more about this disagreement with a vampire.
Yeah, what do you think the disagreement was about, number one? And two, the way he said it means it just wasn't a disagreement. Like, they actually, threw down, I think.
Probably. Because if it's a big enough disagreement to mention, it was probably a minor brouhaha. I'm assuming that it's like they both had to be held back and then,
Oh,
Then a Maxine.
Do you think it was like an actual fight, or do you think they're like, hold me back, and they're not actually trying to fight?
I think it was probably closer to that.
Think it was a hold me back fight?
Yeah, I think it was a hold me back fight.
Gotcha.
I don't think it was like a...
What do you think vampire physics are in Harry Potter world? Are they
That's what I want to know.
Are they supernatural in strength and speed, or are they just dudes that drink blood? Just regular people that drink blood.
I'm hoping that there's a bit of lore. I would imagine with the way that a lot of the other magical creatures are described, it's that it has elements of the, they would probably have some level of super strength. Maybe it's just been exaggerated over time in folk tales, but maybe they are more predisposed to being stronger and have a slight aversion to garlic, something like that.
Right.
But that's what I want to... I love vampires, and I would just love to know more about that.
Well, let's just be thankful that it's Hagrid and not Lupin. Because, that werewolf-vampire rivalry, that's a lot.
That would be...
That's too much. Too much. We eventually get to the mountains, which I'm presuming, if we're going that far east about it, would be the Ural Mountains in Russia?
You're the geography guy.
I'm thinking we're going Eastern Europe, Western Russia, the Ural Mountains.
I trust you.
We're going to go with that.
I trust your judgment on that.
Is where these giants have been relocated? because Hagrid gives us a little history on this.
Relocated sounds very nice.
Shunned?
I think shunned works.
Okay, fair enough. So Hagrid gives us a little history on giants here. He says that giants from around the world, he alludes to around the world,
Yeah.
giants have essentially been ostracized and either just flat out killed, like genocidal, just killed,
Yeah.
or again, relocated, shunned, whichever verbiage you would like to use, to a certain location where they can live, quote unquote, in harmony.
Mm-hmm.
Really just away from witches and wizards, because he also points out that giants are not meant to be clustered together,
Which makes sense.
especially ones from different tribes who are asserting their own authority. So essentially, yes, witches and wizards have killed many, many giants. Giants have killed many, many giants.
Yes.
So that's kind of a sad... Maybe Hagrid should just... Maybe Binns should just bring in guest lectures and have like Hagrid come in and give like a breakdown on the history, that like the giant wars and stuff like that. Maybe he would be better at it.
That would actually be kind of interesting.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe everyone wouldn't fall asleep then.
I know I was intrigued reading this chapter. I know we had different thoughts on this chapter.
Yes.
I was actually intrigued when Hagrid got into the whole business of courting the giants, because I think it's like a super cool undercover spy mission with giants. I'm like, this is kind of cool. Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how he was describing it, which I'm sure is accurate. So he describes the giants, because Ron is like, how big were they? Thanks, Ron, because we were all honestly wanting to know.
Ron is asking the good questions.
He's us.
Yes.
He's our
serving as
avenue of information.
Yes.
And the giants were roughly 20 to 25 feet tall, and they were roughly 70 to 80 in number, which is pretty significant. And then he gets to the nuts and bolts of what he actually had to do here. And props to Albus Dumbledore, because that man is so up to date on his giant protocol. Like, he knows all the ins and outs.
He's very aware of just a lot. Which sounds really lame when I say it, but like he's very aware of giant customs. He's also aware of things that are going on in London. He's also got eyes in other places. Like, he's just a very well-informed, well-rounded individual.
I get there are reasons why.
Mm-hmm.
I do understand that. But does it disappoint you at all that in these plays for allies, Voldy and Albus aren't in person on any of these themselves?
I think it makes sense that you would send someone else. Only because there's probably greater risk for them to be out.
I get that you're like the general and you
Yeah.
don't want to put yourself on the front line, because
Yeah.
if you go down, then...
That's essentially what it is. I think also for this, it's interesting for Voldemort, but I think it was kind of a strategic play on Dumbledore's part, because I think he has gone out on like other missions to do things before, but he did send 2 half-giants. So I think he was maybe trying to
Play an angle?
play that angle a little bit.
I get you, but... And I understand you don't want to put the general, like, front line.
Yeah.
I get that, but when your generals are essentially gods, I mean, they are the 2 most predominant wizards on the planet.
Yeah.
Not much can touch them other than each other. Like,
That's true, but it might be more, he might be needed to be doing other things.
fair. I don't know. It's just like
this wasn't a high priority.
if he is so up on giant customs and how this all works,
Yeah.
maybe. And this is gonna be a weird take from me, and I already know. If I was a giant, and you're like, oh, Albus Dumbledore sends his remarks, I'm like, oh, where is he? Like, why isn't he coming? Like, if I were the Gurg here, if I'm Gurg of the Giants, I'm asking them, that's cool. Where is he? Like, how about he comes and speaks to me, and then I'll actually listen.
So you don't want to hear it from anyone except the head guy.
If you're trying to court me into a war,
Yeah.
I'd best be talking to the man.
Well, but then that also goes for Voldemort, right? Like, you're not
Yeah.
going to talk to the Death Eaters if it's not Voldemort?
No, I'm not.
So
I'm not talking to a pawn. I'm a leader.
Then maybe
I'm going to talk to a leader.
Then maybe neither of them are going to come, and then you're just going to sit this one out.
I'd probably survive.
That's fair.
So, I mean,
You seem a little bit more diplomatic, maybe, than some of the giants.
fair enough. That's fair. So I just mentioned Gurg very flippantly. The Gurg is the chief of the giants, who we get to know is Carcass. He does not seem like a particularly diplomatic, wise giant. He's fat, lazy, and ordering others to bring him food. He's roughly 22 to 23 feet, so I guess he's above average size?
He's not the tallest, but he's above average.
Right. 22 to 23 feet tall, with a weight of roughly a few bull elephants, which is significant. That's several tons. So it's a big dude.
Yeah.
We get to the pomp and circumstance of this whole thing.
Yes.
So there's a procedure that needs to be followed when you're courting giants. You have to bring them a gift. And the gift can't just be anything. They tend to like magical gifts because they can't do it.
Yes.
So the first gift presented is a branch of, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Gubrathian
That's what I would have guessed.
fire. And that essentially is everlasting fire.
Which is a pretty neat
It's a cool gift.
day one gift.
Might take a while to like prove that that's a thing. Like everlasting fire, like what do? You pour water on it and then it still goes?
I was about to ask you that.
Yeah, I'm assuming, and like do you cover it and then uncover it and it's still going?
Oh.
Like yeah, kind of. Like how do you prove? It might take a while to prove
Yeah.
that it never goes out. But they mentioned that they recognize that this is a pretty cool gift because while they don't come off as very smart, they're more with it than you think, because they themselves as giants know that not every wizard can do that.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty special form of magic.
I thought that was neat that they did actually recognize
Yeah,
that.
they're more with it than I think some would recognize, and I think that's what Albus and Voldy would both be indicating to their envoys is like, whatever preconceptions you have of this race, they're more with it than you think, and they're more dangerous than you think. Tread carefully.
Yes.
I guess is the bottom line.
We also know that not all of them speak English because he had to grab a couple giants to translate.
I think it's amazing that some of them even did.
I think it's amazing that there's a couple giants that can speak more than one language.
Yeah. Which is just further a point to
To what you just said of like they are more
don't
intelligent.
underestimate this particular race. But Albus also knew that he needed to bring multiple gifts over multiple days because it had to be a slow courting process to establish trust and let them know that you'll keep promises.
I thought that was clever.
Very clever. Talk about a diplomacy tactic.
He is an absolute master.
He's playing this chess game well.
Yes.
But second gift is indestructible goblin battle helmet, which is just awesome.
Pretty cool.
Every word of that was awesome. Indestructible goblin battle helmet? Yes, please. Give me one of those. I would love that.
Here's the problem with it. It doesn't necessarily save you.
That's true. I'd rather have it than not.
That's fair.
So,
I'll give you that.
also, how do you prove that? Do you just like bash on it?
I mean, they tried. The helmet survived.
Oh, well, yeah. The helmet did great. That was the second day.
Yeah.
During the night, that second night into the third morning, they witness what can only be described as violent chaos, which ended with Carcass literally becoming a beheaded carcass.
Yep.
With the head going to the bottom of the lake. And the new Gurg, Golgamath, claiming the helmet for himself, as well as a necklace of what looked to be human bones. This is a particular type of giant.
Yeah, that's not concerning.
No. And then you essentially get a lot of the giants around either with him or severely beaten. There's a vibe taking place here. But they try, and they go to him with a great roll of dragon skin, which could also be a very cool gift. Also, dragon skin, hard to penetrate. You could use that for like a lot of different things. Yeah. It could be a fireproof garment. It could be, it's a little tougher, so it might repel some weapons. Like you might not be able to get a knife or an axe through that, depending on unless it's just decorative and it's just a really pretty coat of dragon skin.
Maybe it's just pretty.
Maybe it's just coat.
Maybe giants just like pretty things.
Maybe. I don't know.
Makes a nice weighted blanket.
Probably does. Maybe he's got some stress and anxiety going on after now he's ruling. Yeah. So,
it's stressful being a leader, you know?
Apparently very stressful. To be beheaded during the night. Anyway. So that gift did not go over well. And he ends up holding Hagrid by his foot.
Very quickly. Things happen very fast.
And we just mentioned how big Hagrid is, so that's an achievement. To just flippantly just hang him up by his foot.
That's also, I don't really understand the logic behind that. So he comes and he's giving you presents.
Yep.
And he gives you this really cool present.
Yep.
And your response is to just be like, I don't want to see what this guy's got left. I'm just going to shake him upside down.
I have a theory.
Yeah.
So Olymp ends up saving Hagrid by using some quick spell work. And ends up hitting the giant with the conjunctivitis curse right in the eye.
Ow.
Yeah, so literally you're giving the giant pink eye. Yeah, is essentially what you're doing.
It's a little rude, but I get it.
But you know who used this curse and where she might have picked it up from?
Who?
Crumb. Crumb used it on the dragon in the Triwizard Tournament.
You're right, he did.
So she might have picked that one up from Victor Crumb.
Well played, Madame Maxime.
Yeah.
Well played.
So I don't know. I'm just saying we've seen that curse before. Yeah. She happened to be a judge for that event.
Certainly adds up.
Maybe she was like, when you're going up against pretty durable, hard to beat things, that seemed to work.
Why not hit him in the eye? It is a good strategy.
It is a good strategy.
Eyes are a weak spot.
I just wonder if she picked that one up from actual Victor Crumb.
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, that makes sense.
Maybe that's just a little Easter egg thrown in there.
Yeah.
So
just a little detail, you know.
But now we're getting to the point where I think there's shenanigans in play.
Okay.
So
Dana's calling shenanigans.
I'm calling shenanigans because they end up learning that Golgamath was more receptive to different envoys.
Yes.
They get McNair and another Death Eater that Hagrid couldn't recognize specifically. He knew McNair because he was the one coming for Buckbeak.
Yeah.
So he's very acquainted with McNair. Good on Hagrid, speaking of from the last chapter of Fred, George, and Harry, like, not calm when Draco's taunting them.
Yes.
Good on Hagrid for not immediately rushing in there and trying to rip off McNair's head, which he, in theory, because this is technically a war is going on, even though it's understated.
Yeah.
He says Maxime wanted to. Yeah. Maxime was all ready for like, hey, let's just take him out. We totally could. And Hagrid's like, no, we got a job. We got to take care of this job. Good on him for having the restraint not to attack McNair.
Very impressed with Hagrid and with that.
My shenanigans.
Yes, what's your shenanigans?
I don't think Golgamath just randomly decided to have a coup.
You think he was egged on?
Yeah.
By
yes, I do.
The Death Eater? Ooh. Okay.
I think they went into this
camp. I've never thought of that before.
They're not dumb either. And going back to what you were saying in the last chapter about Slytherins always get this shake of being dumb, brutish, like just all brains all muscle and no brains.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe, which is just inherently not true.
Yeah.
I think this is an example of, I'm looking at this as McNair and that Death Eater did not go rushing into this. They also sat in the mountains and observed what was going on They observed the giants at play, not just Carcass. They observed all of the giants and was like, that one. I think we can get to that one. Big dude, big giant, looked physical, looked mean. And we're like, we might have some things in common with that one.
I like this.
I think we can make a deal. I think we can make a partnership. I think we give him the chiefdom, and he gives us his loyalty. And I think now we have a partnership. And I think they outwitted Hagrid, Olymp, and Albus. So I think give the win to McNair, whoever the other Death Eater was, and Voldy on this one. And they outsmarted our heroes.
So I never thought of it like that. I thought that this was just kind of a random happenstance of they got unlucky and the Giants
I think
were
it's a targeted
fighting,
coup.
But that's... Ooh, okay.
They assessed Carcass as being favorable towards Albus.
Okay.
So they're like, how can we unseat him
Okay.
by giant dynamics, not us going in there firing spells?
Yeah.
How can we
stage a coup.
naturally unseat this guy?
So you're saying this was a false flag operation?
Yeah, 100%.
I like that. I really like that.
I think they just outsmarted everybody.
I never read it that way, but I really like that because that really adds a couple more dimensions to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm on board with... Oh, okay.
So,
I like that.
And that just, to me, that's more towards your point in the last chapter of all Death Eaters are just blunt instruments of death.
Yeah.
No, they have a brain.
No, they're thinking.
They don't have to fight themselves. They could coax others to do it for them and get the same result.
I like that. That also does feel like a understated Slytherin dynamic.
And the thing that made me think of that dynamic is because Hagrid mentions, like, you can tell Goldmath why he would favor McNair over them.
Okay.
They seem to have a similar mindset, a similar personality set.
Makes sense.
And I think that's what McNair saw, and I think he exploited it.
I like it.
So that's my
Alright.
2 cents on that. Also, before we get away from the Hagrid snark,
Yes.
the trio's trying to get ahead of him on the story and trying to get more out of him, and he's like, quote, hold your hippogriffs.
So the beginning of the book, when you, Elizabeth, and myself were on, we talked about wizarding idioms.
Yeah.
And we now have more wizarding idioms to add to our collection. So we have hold your hippogriffs, and then later on he says that there wasn't enough room to swing a Kneasel.
Yeah, that's true too. That's
So
another one.
We gotta start.
We got a list.
We gotta
these.
start a list together here, and then what it's based on.
We should do a poll on that. What's your favorite wizarding idiom?
Ooh, I like that.
We have to go back to the first chapter and figure out what those were. Yeah.
I'll find those and
Please do. Please send them to
you.
me.
So at one point during all of this, when he's talking about him and Madame Maxine, he gets distracted for like a solid 30 seconds before Harry's like, okay, that's long enough. Let's keep going.
Okay, so here's my thing on that. While reminiscing on how fierce and wild and what a fine, well-dressed woman Madame Maxine is, while he's distracted by that, yes, it says 30 seconds. Folks, do we know how long 30 seconds is?
It's a really
long time. Here, let's sit for 30 seconds. That was like 5.
Yeah.
That's a long
was 5
time.
seconds and I can't take it anymore.
That was a longer... He sat there for another 25 more seconds. It's a long time.
Things take a turn.
And then Hermione kind of goes a certain kind of direction with it. And there's no easy transition to this, so we're just going to go with it. She asks about Hagrid's mother. Did he find out any information on his mother? Because we know his father was regular human. Mother was a giant. And Hagrid says that his mother died years ago. Which, again, given his brief history on giants, not entirely surprising,
Yeah.
all things considered. But Hermione's like, oh, whoops.
Yeah.
Can one of you speak and say something to save me from this awkward moment? which looking to Ron for an articulate way out is probably not your best option.
Not your best play.
Anyway, we get a little bit longer into this, and then we get a knocking on the door. It ends up being Umbridge. The kids end up trying to get under the cloak, which I'm still amazed at 15, all three of them can fit under the one cloak. How large is this cloak?
Right?
I don't understand. Especially Ron with a particular growth spurt that he had, but whatever. I'll forgo that little issue, and they all hide under the cloak. What they forgot to do was erase their footprints on the way over, which is just rookie ball.
I was about to say
on.
that's amateur. For them, that's amateur.
You know what they won't do is tell Sirius about this moment later, because he will rip them a new one for not getting rid of the footprints behind them. Oh.
Have I taught you nothing?
Come on, guys. This is like sneaking around 101.
Yep. Amateur hour over here.
Yeah, for real. Very disappointing. Anyway, so Umbridge walks in and essentially questions Hagrid on where have you been, which, honestly, fair question. It is a fair question.
I don't like Umbridge. He did kind of just leave for 2 months and not tell anyone where he was going.
Yeah, and everybody's been oddly vague about it, and Dumbledore's not saying anything, and he has been, quote, away for his health as he looks like a beaten, bloody mess. And then he says he needs fresh air, which, again, fair comment coming back from her is like, you live outside. You're a gamekeeper.
I love that line.
Let's be real about it.
Gamekeepers need a lot of fresh air. Like she sees right through.
I know she's being her.
Yeah.
Just taking her role outside of the other things she's already done.
Yeah.
And how brutal she's been. This interaction's actually fairly
mild for her.
It's part of the game here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not off base. She's being fair and asking these questions. Like, you're a teacher. You've been out of your post for 2 months. Where have you been?
I don't know if my current job does this, but my past jobs have done it where if you don't show up for 3 days, you're fired for desertion. Like, they consider you having willfully terminated your employment, and they'll just jettison you. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
The only difference here is his boss sent him away for 2
I mean, that's fair. I'll give him that. But
yeah,
it is a little bit suspect.
Oh, it is. Like, from Umbridge here, this is actually all fair.
Yeah, like, she's a new, technically, administrator of the school. She should be able to know where her people are.
It's unfortunate that Hagrid has not been informed of any of this and cannot form any better responses than he does.
Hagrid is a terrible liar.
Well, and he keeps looking at the trio in the corner under the cloak.
Yeah, he's not great in pressure situations.
No, he is. And he just had a massive pressure situation for months.
Let me rephrase. He's good in select pressure situations, and this is not one of them. This does give me one of my favorite lines of the chapter, though, where she's talking to him, and he turns to her and he goes, "I don't mean to be rude, but who the ruddy hell are you?"
That is a great line. That is a great
wonderful line.
And he has no compunction about it because he literally does not know anything about her.
Nope.
Like, nothing.
He doesn't know about her decrees. He doesn't know that she's the High Inquisitor. He knows nothing. It's just some weird short lady who's grilling him about his whereabouts.
And then she gets a little bit more pointed and is like, so who came and visited you? Because there's 3 sets of footprints walking to your hut.
Do you think that that's a serious question by her? Or do you think that she knows?
I don't think it matters either way. I think she wants an answer to it, and whatever answer he gives her what she wants.
Yeah, he can't answer that, and it doesn't inform her in some way.
Right.
Which makes sense. But I was just curious if you thought that she knew who the students were.
I think she does.
Okay.
Because if she strikes me at the very least, she does her homework. She actually does her homework.
Yeah.
And if she's asked anybody anything,
she would know that they were friends.
Yes, that he has a particular relationship with Harry Potter, and then she can infer from there Harry Potter and Hermione and Ron.
I was also thinking because you always see the 3 of them together.
Yeah, and they're very defensive of Hagrid even in the class and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's easy to put 2 and 2 together.
She's abusive. She's evil.
Yep.
She's not dumb.
No.
So I'm sure she could piece that together. My thing is, if I were her, the first thing I would do is go straight to the Gryffindor common room.
Yeah. Catch him out of bed.
Yep, that'd be the first thing I do. She also informs Hagrid of the impending inspections.
Yes.
Which,
Dun dun dun.
if you're Hagrid, you're immediately anxious about. Because your abilities as a teacher have been essentially constantly questioned from the moment you took the position.
Yes.
Some unfairly and some fairly.
Some kind of fairly, but he's always had cover before, and through Dumbledore, he no longer has cover.
Correct. And even Hermione is like, I will write your lessons for you. I will literally do this for you. Because I'm a little worried.
Yeah.
Which is not a great sign.
No.
And the other great sign that worries them is he's like, oh, I got great lessons planned for your OWL year. Oh, it's going to be great. And they're like, oh, no.
Yeah. I love Hermione being like, can't you just teach us, like, the normal things? And he's like, but the normal things are boring. And she's like, please be boring.
But I have the only domesticated herd in Britain. So Hermione's a little worried. And she probably has right to be.
Yep.
And then she ends with, like, I don't care about Trelawney, but they will not get Hagrid. She won't get Hagrid. So we'll see.
We will see.
With that, we will end the non-spoiler section, and we will get to the spoiler section of Chapter 20, Hagrid's Tale, where we talk a little bit more Hagrid. We'll be right back.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
All right, so we are back with the spoiler section of Chapter 20, Hagrid's Tale. And while Hagrid was telling the trio of his endeavors, which I still think are really cool, you did not find this chapter as particularly interesting?
It wasn't my favorite. It's a nice break from the school settings. We find out, it does fill in the gap of we find out what Hagrid's been up to. So it does have a kind of a nice break. His storytelling it paints a very different picture than where we currently are. Obviously, you kind of forget a little bit that Harry's just been told that he can't play Quidditch anymore. You forget about, that feels far away when you're listening to Hagrid talk about all of the giants. But it just doesn't. It didn't really grab me as much. It's not my least favorite by any means. It just wasn't something I thought was, phenomenal. Like when I was reading the last chapter, I was really getting into it.
Yeah.
And then Umbridge came, and I was like, well, there we go. And then it was kind of
the general Umbridge effect.
It really is. And then it felt like the same thing for this chapter. It's like, all right, we're starting to maybe pick up momentum. We're starting to find things out. We're starting to get answers. And there's Umbridge.
Yeah.
She's just such a good thwart.
I liked it just because of you finally get a real peek at a real Order of the Phoenix operation.
That's true. This is like our first
real glimpse of the war.
Yeah.
And like how something really, really went. And it's cool. It's giants.
Yeah.
And you have literal Death Eaters and Order of the Phoenix members like going head to head, trying to accomplish something. And honestly, it's a little bit of a twist that the Death Eaters win. I
do like that with this. As much as it's kind of an emotional, like, no, you were making progress and now you're not, and now what's going to happen? It's a little stressful in the sense of like, well, what's going to happen now with the giants? But it's nice to... I don't like plots where the good guy wins every single time.
Yeah, no, 100%.
So, like, it's a nice break to, like, it does make it a little bit more realistic. There are some stakes here. Like, you can fail. Like, I do like that aspect, too.
And think of the stage that's set here, because if you remember Book 1, the threat that trolls presented, and a giant is twice the threat of a troll.
Yeah.
So just scaling up. Like, you're literally facing a really big threat, both literally and figuratively. It's a problem. It's as obviously Dumbledore thought highly of it enough to be like, this is a priority. We need to go do this.
Yeah.
Because this was a problem. First Wizarding War. We're not having this again. Let's get out ahead of it. And the fact that he has foresight enough to try to create as many good relationships with heads of state, because I guess you can technically call the Gurg of the Giants a head of state, because he's the head of a race of people, to try to treat as many of these members with as much courtesy as possible, so that when he does need something down the road, they remember that he's done something good for them.
It's really good diplomacy.
It's very good diplomacy. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not.
Yep.
In this case, it didn't.
And there is a little bit of hope that Hagrid still has that some of the Giants will remember it.
Yeah.
So it might not be fully counted out. It's just they haven't explicitly won all of them.
I don't blame Ron for being like, oh, it's a lost cause. Like, I can't believe we lost this.
Yeah.
And it's a really nuanced, extraordinarily mature response from Hagrid, was being like, it's not all lost.
Yeah.
Some might remember that we were good and there's an outlet for you.
Yeah.
And that's such a nuanced approach that I loved.
I really enjoyed that part.
I don't know if I appreciated that. Well, no. I know I didn't appreciate that enough when I was reading this as a kid.
Yeah.
But as an adult, I'm like, oh, man, that's a really cool approach to that.
Yeah.
And it's right. So.
No, exactly. Like, it was worth the attempt, and you might still get something instead of just never attempting won't get you it at all.
This is a chapter that, as a kid, I might have glossed over more, and as an adult, I appreciate it more because I appreciate Hagrid's response to it all. I appreciate Dumbledore's prep in the whole thing.
Yeah.
More, like just reading it as like, oh yeah, this is kind of how it should be done.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And then the Death Eater comments that I made in the non-spoiler too, of like, hey, wait a minute, there might have been some shadow operations going on the side.
I love that because that adds so much depth to it.
Yeah.
Where it's not just a random happenstance that these Giants had
just unlucky
that night. Right. It's a little bit more. There's so much more nuance there now. Of this is a strategy game on both sides.
I think Hagrid might think of it as an unlucky break.
Yeah.
I don't think Dumbledore or Voldy believe in luck. I think they're two people that make their own luck. Even if it's brewing liquid luck, they're making their own luck. I knew you guys were going to point out that Felix Felicis stuff. I wanted to cut that right there. That being said, Hagrid was still, even with all the information that he gave to us and the trio, he was still very vague on a lot of things.
We don't know definitively how he got hurt. We don't know why Madame Maxine made it back so much sooner than Hagrid did. He's not answering all of these questions.
Yet.
Yeah.
But very soon, we learned that it wasn't just Madame Maxine and Hagrid making the trek back. He brought back a certain somebody. And that somebody is Grob. Grob.
His half-brother, Grob.
Correct. And Jenn and I are both on the record as saying that Grob is not our favorite aspect of Order of the Phoenix.
No, he is not.
Personally, I just don't think his storyline is relevant at all.
It's not terribly compelling, and the only part that he is relevant in feels a little ham-fisted.
We'll get into Grob more, but we'll just... Essentially, his whole plot is they're trying to keep him hidden in the Forbidden Forest. Hermione's trying to teach him some English so they can communicate better.
It's not going great.
It's not going well. He's causing a disturbance in the Forbidden Forest because he's not supposed to be there. They're not used to having giants or half-giants or whatever just walking through. Because he's substantially bigger than Hagrid. He's like 15 to 18 feet tall. Mm-hmm. He's undersized for a giant, but he's still significantly larger than Hagrid.
Yeah.
So the other forest dwellers are reticent of this massive presence because they're all aware that giants do carry a little bit of invulnerability to an extent. So the centaurs are like, whoa, we don't like this.
I can't see Bane being cool with this.
No, and just general other creatures are hesitant because he's essentially a petulant child of just like causing destruction because he's flailing about, he's trying to move.
He's a very dangerous, petulant child.
Yeah.
Because he's got the strength of, I don't know how many men.
Right.
And the temperament of a
Right.
toddler. So it's not a great combo.
That can't communicate well,
Right.
and there's a lot of problems.
Keeps ripping up trees.
And as Hagrid is sent away, eventually, he leaves the trio in charge of taking care of Grub, which is not ideal.
Not
Not ideal.
not ideal.
You know,
to put it lightly. It's not
he
ideal.
figured Harry didn't have enough on his plate, so he was just like, do this for me. That'd be great.
It's so funny because Hagrid can be so insightful like a lot of times when he tells Harry, I feel like he's told him before, you need to focus on this, you need to keep your head down, you need to, he'll give him legitimate advice. And then in the middle of all of this, he just seemingly forgets himself. And he's like, yeah, can you take care of my half-brother while I'm gone? And it's like, this should not be even remotely on this kid's plate.
My biggest issue is there doesn't seem to be the payoff. Like, I get that he's part of the distraction of Umbridge that leads to her ultimate downfall and aggressive dismissal from Hogwarts.
I like that, yes.
He's part of that whole chaotic scene in the Forbidden Forest with Umbridge. Understandable. That's not a payoff for me.
It's not.
And then the payoff in Deathly Hallows is he comes in and is part of the anti-giant force, because obviously Voldy does have his giants on Hogwarts property.
Yeah.
And Grop was essentially a punching bag for them. And he gets a little bit of revenge, but he's also not really fighting giants mano a mano. He's kind of just picking up Death Eaters and throwing them. And he's taking Acromantulas and throwing them away. And, he's a chaos. He's literal chaos that he just throws into the battle.
Yeah.
That's not a good payoff for me either.
If you removed Grop from this, you don't lose any.
Correct. You could have had centaurs or something like that
Right.
else cause the chaos in the forest just themselves.
Right.
Or whatever. There's other things that could have happened.
Yeah.
Okay. And I get that some people are probably maybe yelling at us. Maybe they like Grop. Maybe they like that storyline. That's great and that's cool and that's awesome. We'll get more into the Grop as he actually comes in, and we can maybe dive a little bit more into the details of it as we get more. Because, hey, I haven't read this book in a minute, and I have been one to read this book and do this podcast and reading characters that I didn't like or had issues with, and then I'm like, wait a minute. This was a little bit more nuanced than I thought originally. Or maybe there was a little bit more depth to this character than I had originally put in. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Maybe you'll be Grop's
Maybe.
biggest fan.
Sure. I'm not going to go that far. But I might be surprised.
Yeah.
Who knows? Maybe there's more details in there that I had long forgotten that maybe smooth it out. So who knows? We'll get into it.
This was just the foreshadowing chapter for Grop's introduction.
Yeah, everything that Hagrid's being vague about and around and not disclosing.
We're setting the basis for
Is Grop.
Grop.
Yep. So, can you believe it? We're halfway through this book.
It's wild.
This massively thick book.
It's a huge book. I can't believe it's already halfway. That's crazy.
It's crazy. So, and we have some massive, massive chapters coming up, as you know, if you're listening to the spoiler section. Hopefully you've also read them at some point. Are you, having gotten this far through Order of the Phoenix, you said you reread it already, and now you're rereading it again for this podcast.
Yes.
Have your opinions on Order of the Phoenix shifted a little bit? Or are you still like, nope, I don't like this book?
I am still very strongly in the camp of it's not my favorite book.
Really?
Yes. I think it's still probably my least favorite out of all of them, which I do find really funny because this was the book that got me back into Harry Potter, because after I took a long hiatus. But I actually am very excited for the end of this book. Not because it means it's over, but because I actually, the best part of this book, in my opinion, is
I'd agree.
what everyone says.
Sure.
It's the Department of Mysteries, because it's such a... First of all, it feels like something's finally happening. Second, Umbridge is out of the picture. Because I really do not enjoy Umbridge at all. ever. Even in her final chapter, even when I know that the end is coming, I'm still gritting my teeth to get through it.
But the fact that you even have that much emotion about it.
But I don't want to feel that in my downtime.
Fair enough.
That's
I understand.
She is so well written to elicit that kind of reaction.
Sure.
But
yeah.
I am just not the right person.
Fair enough.
For that.
I know people that have stopped reading Harry Potter
yeah.
at book 5 because they couldn't emotionally get through it.
Yes.
I do know people like that
yeah.
just they couldn't. They were emotionally overwhelmed.
Yes. It is a very, I think of all of the books, for me, it's the most emotionally provoking, and I think that's why I have a strong reaction to it, and also why it is tiring for me to read. And that's all where it comes in of like, I'd rather read something happy and fun and like neat instead of reading it and being like, because I'm also the type of person I don't want to end if I'm reading the book at night or something like before bed, I don't want to end on something that's a downer. So I'm the type of person where I'll be like, okay, one more chapter because, that one was upsetting. But the problem is I feel few chapters in this book where I can end on them and not be upset.
Even Gryffindor winning a big Quidditch match, ended on a downer.
Right. That's exactly
yeah.
my point. It feels like there are so many chapters where it's like, something really compelling and interesting is happening, because I really enjoyed reading all of the Gryffindor Slytherin. Like, that's quintessential Harry Potter to me. But then when it ends with Umbridge coming in, it's like, okay, that's a downer.
This whole book technically ends on a downer because it's like Voldemort's now back.
This book is downer after downer.
There's the obvious big one.
Right.
But, ultimately, the very end of the book is
that's a downer.
Voldemort's now back.
Yeah. There's a lot of downers. It's a very emotional book for this. And then even chapters where you think you're safer, you're like, okay, Hagrid's
But
help.
you just said you love when the villains win a little bit. It's not all heroes all the time.
I like villains who aren't, I don't know, there is something about Umbridge where she's on another level for me.
Sure.
Like, I love Disney villains. Those are great. Love it when they win every now and then. It ups the stakes. It's totally cool. I really do not like Umbridge. She grates me. But to my point too, I want to get this out. Even innocuous looking chapters like Hagrid's Tale still end with Umbridge.
Yeah.
Like, you can't escape her in this book, and that's also what makes it so hard, because you're like, you don't know when she's going to pop up. She's going to pop up and ruin your day. That's what she does.
I gotta say that ending to chapter 19 with her popping into McGonagall's office was a type of dread that is really an achievement of writing, because when you get that hem, you just know.
Yep.
And it really is an achievement of her writing that she can even elicit that, like, oh no.
Yeah.
By just two little words.
Yep.
That aren't even really words, they're just sounds.
She wrote Umbridge so well.
It's really good.
And I think I don't hate the movies like some people hate the movies, and I think Imelda Stanton really
she knocked it out
of the park with
yeah,
that. Like,
she was
I
outstanding.
Picture her when I read these books, and
I hear her.
Yeah.
That's the voice
Yep.
that I hear.
Yep.
It's so well
Same.
done.
It's very well done. I hate every moment of it, but it's very well done. I can acknowledge when it's done well. I am very excited for the Department of Mysteries, and I am very excited for the end of the book.
We will have to figure out some special thing for the Department of Mysteries, because I know all of us want to get our 2 cents in on that chapter.
It is a wonderful chapter.
It's a lot, so we'll figure out something special for it. We'll have some special episode, or maybe we split it into multiple episodes. We'll see. We'll figure that one out on our end. But yeah, you have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Cool. We will end it here for Chapter 20, Hagrid's Tale. Thank you guys for listening. Let us know your thoughts by commenting on the episode on Spotify or on Twitter. Please participate in the polls that are also on Spotify. We really love hearing your thoughts and opinions on everything. Your agreements and disagreements with us are always fun to kind of have. And we appreciate all of that feedback. Please repost and share the podcast. Help us grow. And if you're so inclined, click that support the podcast button wherever you're listening. And if you want to, you can donate financially It's a lot of work and time that goes into this, so we really appreciate any of that. It helps. So thank you guys for listening, and we will be back next week. Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Hogwarts a Pod.